Chapter 51, Rushing to the Battlefield. No, of course not. But why didn't you mention it before? Willow nodded. She realized that now that she and Caspian were married, his foster mother was basically her mother as well now. Currently, Caspian was rushing to the South Eredlands battlefield. It was only natural for her to take care of her foster mother. My identity is special. As a bodyguard to a general, I can't give the enemy any leverage. In order to protect my foster mother, I didn't reveal her to anyone, Caspian explained. That means she didn't attend our wedding. Will she be upset? Willow asked, feeling a bit worried. Don't worry. My foster mother is easygoing. I've already had Sylvia explain to her, and she will be here later, Caspian said. Willow nodded. She would definitely take good care of his foster mother when he was gone. While I'm away, please take care of yourself. I'm afraid I won't be able to accompany you for a while. I really hope you can treat my foster mother well and ensure she enjoys a happy and fulfilling life. She single-handedly raised me since I was young, and it hasn't been easy. Unfortunately, I haven't had the chance to adequately repay her yet, but I must now rush to the front lines, Caspian explained. I understand. Don't you worry. Now that we're married, I'll treat your foster mother as if she were my own mother, Willow said. She didn't want Caspian to have too many concerns, as it would surely affect his performance on the battlefield. I'm not worried about you. It's just that I'm afraid my mother-in-law might give my foster mother a hard time, Caspian said. Don't worry. I'm here. I won't let any injustice befall your foster mother, Willow said. Once my foster mother arrives, I will be ready to leave. Caspian looked at Willow and said, You're leaving like this on our wedding night? Willow asked. Caspian paused for a moment and asked, Is there any other matter? No. Nothing, Willow said, feeling a bit annoyed. Was Caspian so oblivious? Didn't he understand what she meant at this moment? Caspian realized that he seemed to have missed something. But at this moment, the time was tight, and he couldn't really think about anything. I have to catch a flight to the South Eredlands at midnight. We don't have much time left. Let's go out and chat with the two elders for a while. Or they'll surely think we're up to something, Caspian suggested. Sure, Willow nodded. You're out. Kate and Carl approached when they saw Caspian and Willow coming out. I'm leaving now. I'm heading to the front lines in South Eredlands. While I'm away, I hope you both take good care of Willow, Caspian said. She is my daughter. Of course, I will take good care of her. I'm moving in with her tomorrow, Kate eagerly said. Sounds good, Caspian replied. Just then, Sylvia brought Caspian's foster mother, Lilith, to the villa. A petite, modestly dressed middle-aged woman walked into the villa. She was Caspian's foster mother, Lilith. It was her first time in such a luxurious villa, and she was stunned by it. She didn't know Caspian's exact identity, only that he was in the military. She'd never expected him to live in such a lavish villa. Mom, you're here, Caspian greeted with a smile. Caspian, Lilith said, showing a relieved smile upon seeing Caspian. You can live here with Willow from now on? This is your daughter-in-law, Lilith. Isn't she beautiful? Caspian gave a brief introduction of Willow to Lilith. Kate and Carl were surprised to see Lilith. They always thought Caspian was an orphan, never expecting him to have a foster mother. However, upon seeing Lilith's modest attire, Kate felt a bit disdainful toward her and didn't initiate a greeting. I'm truly satisfied. You're truly beautiful. You two are a perfect match. Lilith nodded excitedly, grabbing Willow's hand. It was the first time she had seen Willow. Mom, Willow awkwardly called out. However, she didn't resist Lilith's contact, as she found Lilith to be very approachable. Mom, I didn't invite you to the wedding. I hope you don't mind, Willow said. Why would I mind? I'm overjoyed that Caspian could marry such a beautiful bride like you. He has already explained it to me. Actually, it wasn't necessary for him to bring me here. I've been living in the countryside and have become accustomed to it, Lilith said with a smile. Let me introduce you. This is my mother, and this is my father. Willow introduced her own parents to Lilith. Hello, Nice to meet you." Lilith reached out her hand. "Hello, hello, welcome to our villa." Kate forced a smile and shook hands with Lilith before quickly pulling away. In her eyes, Lilith was just a country bumpkin who lacked refinement. "Mom, I have to leave for the front line soon. You and Willow can stay here peacefully," Caspian said as he prepared to bid farewell to his foster mother, Lilith. "Going to the front lines so suddenly, let me see you off." Although Lilith was a country bumpkin, she understood the importance of defending the country. Her son was going to the front lines to protect their home and nation. Caspian nodded and walked out of the villa with Lilith as he supported her movements. As Caspian's wife, Willow walked out as well. At that moment, John, Sylvia, and some guards were waiting outside. "Caspian, be careful on the front lines," Lilith said. "Don't worry, I will come back safely. Wait for me here," Caspian said. Caspian's words filled Lilith's heart with joy. "Willow, when I'm not here, if anything happens, just hang in there until I return," Caspian instructed Willow. "Okay, please come back safely. I'll be waiting for you," Willow said with reluctance. "Don't worry, it's just an ordinary battle. I will be back unharmed." "I have to go now," Caspian said, then prepared to leave. Sylvia felt apologetic. She said to Caspian, "Lord Caspian, I'm sorry for sending you to command on our wedding night. It's all right. The soldiers on the front lines are bravely fighting the enemy. How can I indulge in pleasure? Let's go to battle together," Caspian responded. A sense of authority and dominance suddenly emanated from him, completely transforming his demeanor. A guard opened the heavy door. Caspian got into an off-road vehicle. John and Sylvia followed. The group gradually departed. At this moment of parting, Willow realized how deeply she had fallen for Caspian. Tears welled up in her eyes, refusing to be held back. Lilith, too, couldn't help but shed tears. The time they had together as mother and son was too brief. Ever since Caspian joined the military, their time together was limited. But Lilith knew the importance of the country over family. Despite her reluctance, she was willing to let her son go to the front line. It was only when the off-road vehicle carrying Caspian and his comrades gradually disappeared from sight that Lilith said, "Willow, let's go inside. It's cold out here." "Okay," Willow nodded, wiping away the tears from the corners of her eyes. She supported Lilith and returned to the villa. The day after Caspian's departure, Kate also moved into the riverside duplex villa. When she saw Lilith, who came from the countryside and seemed unsophisticated, living under the same roof as her, Kate felt extremely displeased. As a result, Kate wanted to direct all her resentment toward Caspian onto Lilith, his foster mother. Chapter 52, Chased Out of the Villa. Upon returning to the Stewart residence, Kate told everyone that Caspian was merely an ordinary guard. The members of the Stewart family found it hard to believe. In no time, the news traveled to Alicia and Richard. Upon learning that Caspian was a regular guard, and not some big shot, Alicia began planning to cause trouble for him. Meanwhile, Caspian and Sylvia rushed to South Erdlands. After he left, all the soldiers stationed at South Lake City were also withdrawn. The news of Caspian being a mere guard spread like wildfire. And before long, everyone in South Lake City knew about it. Moreover, they also learned the reason behind why he could host a unique wedding ceremony. It was because he had saved John. Hence, the latter came personally to support Caspian. In just one night, the people no longer admired him. Instead, their feelings had turned into disdain and contempt. Initially, they thought Caspian was indeed an influential figure. But after all that, he was simply relying on someone else to make an impression. Kate felt regretful when she knew that Caspian's real identity had spread throughout South Lake City. If she had not said a word, no one would have known. Then, everyone would still think he was a big shot and show her great respect. However, since she acted impulsively, it was too late to change anything. When Kate moved into Riverside Villa, she insisted that Carl move in as well. Initially, Carl did not want to stay in the villa. However, Kate forced him to, leaving him no choice. In the following days, Willow had to clock in to work on time every day. Occasionally, she needed to work overtime as well. After all, she had just taken on her new position at Southlake Corporation. Thus, Willow wanted to familiarize herself with the company's operations. At the same time, Carl held a significant position at Stewart Group, too. So, he needed to work every day as well. With that, Kate and Lilith were the only ones left in the villa. Ever since Kate found out that Caspian was a regular guard, she became less fond of Lilith. Taking advantage of Willow's and Carl's absence, she always instructed Lilith to do the house chores. Nevertheless, Lilith, who lived in the countryside for a long time, did not complain. She kept her head down and worked tirelessly. But the more compliant she was, the more Kate wanted to bully her. The latter even thought of chasing Lilith out of the house. Kate wished that she and her family could have the villa to themselves. With that plan in mind, she started to make things difficult for Lilith. Kate would deliberately throw stuff on the floor, and then demand Lilith to clean it up. She would even spill coffee on the floor, asking Lilith to mop it up. Lilith was merely an ordinary woman from the countryside. Yet, she spent most of her time in the villa doing house chores. But, of course, Willow and Carl were completely unaware of this. Though Lilith was willing to do the chores without complaints, she also had a temper. She started to feel upset as Kate bossed her around every day. If it were not because she had made a promise to Caspian, Lilith would have left. She could not help but think that life in the countryside was much better. Then, one late evening, Willow and Carl still had not returned. "Lilith, pour some water for me. I want to wash my feet," Kate ordered. But Lilith did not retort. After Kate was done washing her feet, she started bossing Lilith around again. "You look like you have a lot of free time. Go pour out the water, then," Kate instructed while lounging on the couch. Lilith did not expect Kate's behavior to become so absurd. In an instant, fury overwhelmed the former. "I'm not your maid. I won't do this. I clean up the house for the sake of my child. Why should I serve you? You're a woman from the countryside, and now you get to live in such a lovely villa. What's wrong with asking you to do a few chores? The apple never falls far from the tree. You're just as useless as Caspian," Kate yelled. As she spoke, she kicked the basin, spilling the water everywhere. She continued shouting, "Clean this up now. Otherwise, get out of this villa. Don't stay here any longer." "Fine. I'm leaving right now," Lilith snapped. She couldn't take it anymore and decided to leave. At that moment, it was already past 11:00 p.m. The surroundings of Riverside Villa were exceptionally quiet. Besides, it was far from her countryside home. Lilith considered going somewhere with more people to hail a taxi. However, after a brief stroll, she arrived near a park. There, she saw a young woman glancing over her shoulder anxiously. It was as if the woman was in trouble. Shortly after, Lilith noticed several young men following closely behind the woman. They appeared to have ill intentions. Lilith's expression darkened at that sight. Nevertheless, she did not approach them immediately. Instead, she stood in the dark shadows of the trees and observed silently. "What do you want?" the beautiful young woman asked. At that point, she was already trembling with fear. The young woman was Priscilla Hill. She was a college senior about to graduate. "Hey, sweetheart, Mr. York thinks you're beautiful and would like to take you for a ride. How does that sound?" Billy Jennings, a burly man, asked with malicious intent. The Mr. York he mentioned was from the most influential aristocratic family in South Lake City, the York family. To be precise, Billy was talking about Derek York. Right then, Derek was sitting in a Lamborghini nearby. Lilith noticed the sports car. Moreover, there were a few other cars following behind. There were about 7 or 8 luxury cars, including Ferraris and Rolls-Royces. "I'm not interested. Let me go. Otherwise, I'll call the cops," Priscilla said anxiously. Upon hearing those words, Billy flashed a wicked smile. Look at how quiet this place is at this hour. Do you think anyone will come to such a secluded place? Even if you scream at the top of your lungs, no one will come and save you." In the next instant, Priscilla shouted, "Help! Someone, help! Bring her into the car now," Billy ordered. As soon as the words came out of his mouth, several underlings charged toward Priscilla. They wanted to carry her into the car. "Help! Please! Someone, help!" Priscilla was terrified and cried for help with all her might. Seeing that a woman was in danger, Lilith could not stand by and do nothing. She stepped out of the shadows, yelling, "What are you doing? Let her go." Billy and his men instantly turned their heads in the direction of her voice. On the other hand, Willow had just returned to the villa. She saw the water spilled on the floor while Kate lounged on the couch. "Mom, what's this? Why is there so much water on the floor?" Willow could not help but ask. Kate answered, "I accidentally spilled the water. I'll clean it up in a while." At the same time, Willow noticed Lilith was nowhere to be seen. "Where's Madame Ziegler?" "That unruly woman insisted on leaving after I scolded her briefly," Kate exclaimed. Her answer left Willow momentarily stunned. She had thought her mother was on good terms with Lilith. "What? Why did you scold Madame Ziegler? She's as useless as Caspian. All I asked her to do was pour out the water in the basin. Yet, she refused. I nagged at her a little, and she got upset," Kate replied indifferently. Willow was somewhat furious. "Mom, you've gone too far. Madame Ziegler is Caspian's foster mother, after all. You have an equal relationship. She's not our cleaner or maid. How could you treat her like that?" Before Caspian left, he was worried that Kate would bully Lilith. Hence, he had repeatedly instructed Willow to look out for Lilith. And at that time, she promised him that Lilith would have a comfortable stay. However, at that moment, such a situation had occurred. Kate, whom Willow reprimanded, became mad. "Equal relationship. Why should we be equal? She's a woman from the countryside. What right does she have to stay with me? Is she even worthy of being near me? I can't stand the sight of her, so it's good that she left." When did she leave? Right then, Willow refused to continue the topic. She knew she had to bring Lilith back as soon as possible. Moreover, it was late at night, and Lilith was unfamiliar with the area. If something were to happen to her, Willow would not be able to face Caspian. Yet, Kate remained unconcerned as she answered, "About half an hour ago." In an instant, Willow rushed out the door. She did not even stop for a second to put her bag down. "What are you doing? Why are you going out at this hour?" asked Kate. "I'm going to look for Madame Ziegler. If anything happens to her, I'll never forgive you," Willow responded as she ran. After that, she got into the Rolls Royce and left the villa. Chapter 53, An Intense Fight. Willow was worried about Lilith. That was because the latter was unfamiliar with the area. What if something happened to her? Willow drove the Rolls Royce around, looking for her. Meanwhile, at the park, Billy and his men were about to carry Priscilla into the car. Suddenly, they heard a voice shouting, "What are you doing? Let her go." As soon as they turned around to look, they realized it was just a woman. They were immediately annoyed. "What the hell are you shouting for? It's the middle of the night. Get lost. Otherwise, you'll regret it," Billy threatened Lilith. Priscilla was already in a state of despair. Upon hearing someone shouting, she thought she could be saved. But to her dismay, the person was a woman. Priscilla's hopes were crushed once again. "Let the woman go," Lilith yelled while approaching them. She was somewhat afraid. However, she could not stand by and do nothing when someone was mistreating a woman. At the sight of Lilith walking toward them, Billy barked, "Let's teach this busybody a lesson." Then, one of his underlings closed in on Lilith. As he approached her, he raised his fist and aimed it at her. To them, Lilith was merely an older woman. Thus, they did not think she was a threat. But in the next second, Lilith's expression darkened, and she swiftly delivered a kick. Ouch! The man yelped. He took a solid blow to his groin, causing him to collapse on the ground. His face contorted in pain as he rolled around. The other men witnessing it could not help but clench their thighs in discomfort. No one had expected Lilith to fight back. "Get her. Beat her to death," Billy shouted. Two of his men moved in closer to surround Lilith. Although she usually did manual labor on the farm, her reactions were quick. Lilith caught the two men off guard by kicking at their lower parts. Billy was left dumbfounded after seeing that. On the other side, Derek, in his Lamborghini, shouted impatiently, "What are you doing? Don't waste any more time. Kill her, and throw her into the river. How dare she screw up my plan?" After he said that, the doors of the several Ferraris behind him swung open. Three men stepped out from the cars with batons. They were not from the York family but members of the Flying Dragons. The Flying Dragons was a prominent organization in South Lake City. Derek was on good terms with them. That was why he had the guts to act recklessly. Whenever he saw women he fancied, he would just have them drag her into their cars. When Lilith saw the men approaching her with weapons, she became scared. "Damn. You sure like to meddle in other people's business, huh? We'll kill you first." A bald man named Quentin Lane snarled. He was one of the Flying Dragons' leaders. Lilith's voice quivered as she asked, "What are you trying to do? Are you not afraid of the law? End her." Quentin could not be bothered to talk nonsense. After all, one life meant nothing to him. Just as the members of the Flying Dragons were about to attack, a Rolls Royce screeched to a halt in front of Lilith. In the car was none other than Willow. She had just stopped the car when she saw a group of people with weapons. Moreover, they were about to hurt Lilith. Willow was startled, not knowing what was happening. "Mom, quick, get in," Willow shouted anxiously. Lilith was somewhat surprised to see Willow too. "Willow, what are you doing here?" the former asked. "I've come to bring you back to the villa. Let's go. We can talk about it when we get home," Willow answered urgently. But Lilith could not leave. "You should go now. Don't worry about me. Please call the cops too." If she were to leave, they might harm Priscilla. Even though she was scared, she could not bear to ignore the latter in such a situation. Lilith was even more worried now that Willow had appeared. Given the latter's beauty, she was sure the group of men might harm her too. Hence, she wanted Willow to leave quickly. "Mom, what are you trying to do?" Willow did not understand why the men were targeting Lilith. Lilith hurriedly explained, "They want to hurt that young woman." Willow turned to look. Not far away, she spotted Priscilla, a young woman in her 20s. Right then, there were people holding Priscilla down. At that moment, Willow understood why Lilith had gotten into a conflict with the thugs. "Go. End this old woman's life," Quentin yelled. With that, members of the Flying Dragons, armed with batons, charged toward Lilith. One of them, a more petite man, rushed up to her with his weapon. They believed they could knock Lilith out with just one strike. So, they did not take her seriously. None of them expected that she would snatch the baton from the man. Then, Lilith struck the man on his head. "Ah!" The man cried out in pain while clutching his head. They had underestimated Lilith. She was much stronger than they thought. Seeing Lilith fight with the men, Willow was terrified. Caspian had told her to take good care of Lilith no matter what. Hence, in such a situation, she couldn't bring herself to escape alone. However, Willow could not do anything but watch as they fought. After all, there were 5 or 6 people there. Of course, Lilith had no advantages, either. Fortunately, when she was young, she joined Girl Scouts in school. She even trained with the pike before. Besides, Lilith knew a little martial arts. Additionally, doing farm work had also given her some physical strength. Yet, Lilith could only try her best as she was going against 5 or 6 young men. Not only was she outnumbered, but they also continuously created trouble for her. Lilith wielded the baton she had snatched. She was doing everything she could to deal with the thugs. In the process, she was repeatedly struck by the baton, sustaining more and more injuries. Willow did not expect Caspian's foster mother to be so skilled at fighting. Nevertheless, she was still scared in such a situation. After all, Lilith was a woman and also older. It was a challenge for her to handle the 5 or 6 young men. What made it worse was that each of them was armed with a weapon. Seeing that she was stubbornly fighting back, one of the men took out a knife. Amidst the chaos, he wounded Lilith. In the next second, blood began to flow down her arm. At the sight of blood, Willow grew increasingly anxious. She considered driving her car to knock the members of the Flying Dragons. However, since they surrounded Lilith, it meant she would get hit too. Left with no choice, Willow remained seated in the car. She tightened her grip on the steering wheel while watching the hooligans beat Lilith up. Willow felt helpless. Right then, the man took out his knife once more. He was aiming to stab Lilith. But fortunately, she was quick to react. Lilith dodged the knife and avoided being stabbed. After that, she swung the baton in her hand. She struck the man, causing his knife to fall to the ground. With swift reflexes, Lilith snatched the knife. Chapter 54, Just Leave. With a baton in one hand and a knife in the other, Lilith shouted, "Is there no law and order anymore? Whoever comes closer, I'll stab them to death." Right then, rage overwhelmed her. How dare these thugs prey on an innocent woman in such a place? Back when she was a Girl Scout, she had dealt with many hooligans. Nevertheless, the members of the Flying Dragons remained unfazed. They had the advantage in numbers anyway. Lilith was merely a woman. How much trouble could she cause for them? If they failed to handle one woman, they could no longer survive in South Lake City. Some of the men wanted to subdue Lilith, but they did not know that during the fight, they had all sustained arm injuries. At that very moment, Lilith considered the Flying Dragons her enemies. She felt as though she had returned to the days when she was a Girl Scout. She was not a woman who would give to someone easily, let alone to such thugs. The members of the Flying Dragons also did not expect an unremarkable woman to fight so well. Meanwhile, Willow was shocked, too. Lilith appeared to be a typical farmer. Yet, when faced with these hooligans, she revealed such impressive energy. Quentin was also hurt. The pain he felt intensified his rage. "Finish her," he roared. He did not think they would need to waste so much time to deal with a woman. At this point, members of the Flying Dragons were thoroughly provoked. If word of this incident got out, they would definitely become a laughingstock. Although back then Lilith had indeed learned how to use the pike, it demanded strength and speed. Right now, age had caught up to her. Moreover, she was holding a baton, and her injuries were slowing her down as well. Seeing that Lilith had become weaker, several members of the Flying Dragons charged toward her. 2 of them wielded long batons while the other 2 drew knives. She was no match for 4 armed men. In the brief second when Lilith's reaction was slightly slower, the men stabbed her in the abdomen. Willow's face turned pale with fear at the sight of Lilith's injury. A chill ran down the former's spine. However, Lilith did not collapse. At the same time, the members of the Flying Dragons had gone mad. So, they continued stabbing her. Willow saw blood flowing from Lilith's body. Then, she hurriedly exited the car and yelled, "Stop! Please, stop!" But they did not intend to stop. The next second, they picked up their batons and struck Lilith multiple times. Willow noticed Derek sitting in his Lamborghini. She knew he was a member of a prominent family in South Lake City. Hence, she ran to him, begging, "Mr. York, please ask them to stop. She'll die if this goes on." "What's your relationship with that woman?" Derek asked in confusion. He had not expected South Lake City's prettiest woman to appear at a place like that. Willow replied, "She's my husband's foster mother. She's my mother-in-law." Derek sneered after hearing that. "So, she's your good-for-nothing husband's foster mother." "My husband is not a good-for-nothing. He's currently serving on the front lines in South Aridlands," answered Willow. She continued, "He's a dedicated soldier defending our country. Not too long ago, he held a grand wedding for me. He knows many influential people, too. You better be wise and stop this now. Do you think I'd be scared of you? In plain terms, your husband is just an ordinary guard. This woman is a busybody. She even injured my men. I won't let this go so easily. Derek snapped. Upon hearing his words, Willow could not help but warn him. If you hurt her, my husband won't go easy on you when he returns. Theft. What can your useless husband do to me? Even if I dump this woman into the river, he still won't have the guts to say much. Derek spat while laughing arrogantly. Willow asked helplessly, what do you want me to do so you can let my mother go? Why don't you divorce your husband and be with me? Otherwise, you can have some fun with me. Serve me for a night, and I'll take it as if this never happened. Otherwise, she'll surely end up in the river tonight. Derek responded. Willow could not believe her ears. Dream on, she yelled. She had not expected that Derek would come up with such a shameless suggestion. She would never agree to it. Willow was sure Lilith would never allow that to happen too. He shrugged and commented indifferently, well, I can't help it if you want to see us beat your husband's foster mother to death. Willow turned around to check on Lilith. Right then, the latter was covered in blood. She hurriedly got down on her knees and pleaded, Mr. York, please, I'm begging you. Let my mother go. I'll agree to all your terms besides what you said just now. You're the only one I like. I don't care about the others, Derek replied with a cunning smile. After all, he had been thinking of South Lake City's prettiest woman for the longest time. Yet, he never had the chance to talk to her. So, of course, Derek was not letting this golden opportunity slip away. On the other hand, Lilith, severely injured, yelled with all her might, Willow, don't give in to someone like him. Just leave. Don't worry about me. She'd rather be beaten to death than yield to hooligans like them. Her son was an honorable man. Moreover, he was a soldier defending the country. In addition to that, Lilith used to be a Girl Scout, too. Thus, she would never give in to evil. However, Willow could not stand by to watch the flying dragons beat Lilith to death. She remained on her knees and begged Derek, Mr. York, if she dies, you'll be in trouble too. Please, let her go. Ha ha ha. What a joke. Do you know the status of my family in South Lake City? He countered arrogantly. Don't you know that every influential figure in this city has to show respect to my family? That includes the office of Inspector General's head and leaders of the Flying Dragons. I can easily ask for the head of anyone. No one will investigate me, Derek boasted. At that very moment, Willow fell into despair. That was because she knew he was telling the truth. The York family had such status in South Lake City because they possessed unchallenged power, and with that, they could do as they pleased. Even if they killed Lilith today, it would not stir a commotion the next day. It was just one life. The York family could easily sweep the matter under the rug. Willow was at a loss. Moreover, Caspian was not in town. What should she do now? She grew increasingly anxious, not knowing what to do next. Meanwhile, one of the men was holding Priscilla down. However, she managed to escape when he was not paying attention. Then, she quickly ran toward Willow's car. Willow, get up. Don't ever bow down to a wicked man. Take the young lady and leave now. Lilith shouted when she saw Priscilla was safe. Chapter 55. Lilith is dead. The members of the Flying Dragons soon noticed Priscilla had escaped. They wanted to capture her, but Lilith stopped them. Willow was also aware that it was useless to beg Derek. Thus, she turned back and returned to her car. Willow, take the woman and leave. Hurry, Lilith instructed. She was using all her strength to stop the men from going to them. But Willow could not bear to leave Lilith. Mom, what about you? Hurry up and leave. Don't worry about me. Otherwise, none of us can walk away from this place, Lilith yelled back. The events had taken a turn for the worse. So, Willow dared not waste another second. She told Priscilla, quick, get in the car. The latter was already frightened. Hence, she did not hesitate and climbed into the car. At the same time, Willow got into the driver's seat. "Mom, get in." However, Lilith was firmly holding on to several men. It was impossible for her to break free. "Go now. Just leave," she shouted. This was Willow's first time encountering such a situation. She was terrified and wanted to take Lilith with her. Yet, at that moment, there was no way Lilith could escape. Left with no choice, Willow had to go first. She planned to call the police for assistance after leaving. If she were to delay, neither she nor Priscilla could escape. Tears welled up in Willow's eyes as she hurriedly reversed the car. At that moment, Derek spotted her. Don't let them get away. He wanted to go after her in his car, but unfortunately for him, 2 cars were blocking in front and behind. Billy noticed they were fleeing, too. Then, he shouted furiously, "Don't let those 2 ladies escape." Several members of the Flying Dragons rushed out immediately. Seeing that, Lilith brandished her knife and started to stab everyone. Some of the men were less vigilant. As a result, they sustained minor injuries. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Willow turned the car around and left. "Kill her. How dare she meddle in my business? She's a crazy woman," Derek barked. Both Willow and Priscilla had run away before his eyes, which intensified his anger. The other thugs soon realized they could not catch up with Willow. They turned back to Lilith before venting their frustrations on her. Derek even exited the car himself to attack Lilith. He physically assaulted her to release his anger. "You jerk," Lilith cursed as she threw the baton in her hand. The baton landed right on Derek's head. "Ouch," he yelped while touching his forehead. Right then, fury filled his eyes. "Bitch, end her." On the other hand, Willow drove Priscilla to a street. After that, she told the latter, "Get down now. Call the police and have them send help." "All right, I'll get to it right away. Thank you for helping me," Priscilla replied panikedly. After she exited the car, Willow turned around again. She could not leave Lilith behind, no matter what. Priscilla proceeded to call the police. At that moment, Lilith was lying on the ground. She had multiple stab wounds, and around her was a pool of blood. She could no longer defend herself. You shouldn't have been a busybody. So, now you know what the consequences are, huh? Derek remarked. "You scoundrels. When Caspian returns, he'll surely avenge me." After saying that, Lilith spat out a mouthful of blood. Derek was feeling smug. "How dare you talk back to me? What can you're good for? Nothing, son, do. I'll definitely break his legs if he has the guts to find me. You'll face karma for what you've done," Lilith said through gritted teeth. But Derek merely waved his hand. "Just end her already. I don't want to listen to another word of her nonsense," he ordered. The members of the Flying Dragons were intimidated by Lilith's resilience. Moreover, she was now covered in blood. They knew that if they attacked her, then they might be implicated. "What a useless bunch. Give me the steel pipe. I'll do it myself," Derek snarled. The men abided by his instructions and found him a steel pipe. Derek took it over, weighed it, and raised it high before striking Lilith hard. "Die, you bitch," he yelled. With a loud thud, blood started to flow down from Lilith's head. On the other hand, Quentin drew a short knife, charged toward her, and repeatedly stabbed her. There was blood all over Lilith's body, and at that moment, she was nearly unconscious. Yet, the thugs had no intention to stop. Even at that point, Billy still stepped forward and kicked her several times. Just like that, a resilient woman now lay in a pool of blood. Blood continued to flow out from her body, leaving a large stain on the ground. "Mr. York, I'm sure she's dead. Let's go. What bad luck to encounter a woman like her," commented Quentin. Derek agreed. "Okay, let's go." With that, the group turned, got into their cars, and left the park. Not long after Derek and the others left, Willow rushed back to the scene. She was shocked as soon as she laid her eyes on the blood-stained ground. Moreover, Lilith was lying in a pool of blood. "Mom, "Mom," Willow yelled while running over. Upon reaching Lilith's side, she could not help but cover her mouth. Then, she burst into tears. Lilith had suffered multiple stab wounds. The sight of her body was gruesome. "Mom, please, hang in there. I'm calling the ambulance. Please don't scare me," Willow pleaded. She knelt on the ground, hugged Lilith tightly, and sobbed. Lilith's life was hanging by a thread. She mustered all her strength to whisper, "Willow, I won't make it. Take good care of yourself and Caspian. I hope you'll give birth to a healthy, chubby baby." "Mom, you'll be fine. I'll get help immediately," Willow answered with tears streaming down her face. Lilith responded, "Don't bother. I won't make it. But I'm worried about many things. Remember, wait until Caspian returns to tell him about this. You must keep this in mind," she weakly instructed. "Why can't I let Caspian know?" Willow asked with confusion. Lilith suffered numerous injuries, and she was losing a lot of blood. Yet, she insisted, "Just remember what I said." Despite not knowing Caspian's real identity, he had once told her he was an officer. That was why he frequently led troops in battle. She knew if he found out about her accident, it would affect his duties. Caspian was fighting on the front lines. It was a dangerous place. Hence, Lilith would never let anything happen to him because of her. She understood him well enough to know that he would rush back immediately to seek revenge for her. That was why she told Willow to keep it a secret for now. "Okay, I got it," replied Willow. "Don't be sad, Willow. I was a Girl Scout when I was younger. So, I'm considered half a soldier," Lilith comforted. She added, "That's why I couldn't stand by and do nothing in such a situation. But I don't regret it." Upon hearing her words, Willow cried, "Mom, I'm sorry. I should have spent more time with you. It's all my fault." "You'll be fine. I'll make sure to spend more time with you." Lilith smiled weakly in response. "You've been good to me during this period, and I'm content. I'm happy that Caspian has married a great wife like you." The more she comforted Willow, the harder it was for the latter to accept it. Willow was aware that she had been overwhelmed with work recently. She felt that she had failed to show more concern to Lilith. That was why Lilith became Kate's target of mockery. Yet, Lilith never complained. It was late at night, and suddenly, it began to drizzle. The rain washed away Lilith's blood, and it flowed down the street. Willow witnessed Lilith taking her last breath. Seeing her die in her arms hit Willow hard. "Mom," Willow cried. She felt as though her heart was breaking into pieces. However, this time, Lilith could no longer respond. For a moment, Willow could not bring herself to accept the truth. She never anticipated that Lilith would die trying to save someone after leaving the villa. Before Caspian left for South Aridlands, he had asked Willow to look after Lilith, but she had failed to fulfill this responsibility. All this happened because her own mother had chased Lilith out of the villa. Willow had no idea how to explain everything to Caspian when he returned. Chapter 56, Absolute Power. For a while, Willow was in a state of confusion. What would Caspian think about this incident? How would he feel knowing that Kate bullied his foster mother every day? How would he react after learning that Kate chased Lilith out of the villa? And because of that, Lilith was beaten to death on the street. "Mom, wake up, Mom!" Willow screamed as her tears flowed uncontrollably. She refused to give up just like that. So, she took out her phone and called for an ambulance. At that moment, Willow's hands were already stained with blood. After that, she called Carl to tell him about what had happened. He had just arrived at the villa when he received the call. "Willow, is something wrong?" asked Carl. Willow cried out, "Dad, something terrible has happened." Upon hearing her cries, Carl was startled. However, he remained calm and replied, "What happened? Don't cry, calm down. What exactly happened?" "The members of the Flying Dragons have beaten Madame Ziegler to death," Willow replied. Carl's face went pale immediately. He was momentarily stunned, not knowing how to process the news. What on earth happened? It's hard to explain on the phone. Please, come over now. Willow, too, was at a loss and had no idea how to explain the situation. Where are you now? Carl inquired. Riverside Park. Dad, hurry, please. Kate overheard that someone had been beaten to death. What happened? Who died? She asked in panic. Willow said the members of the Flying Dragons beat Lilith to death. Carl responded urgently. What? How could this happen? She was fine before. Kate was also in shock after learning that, after all, she was the one who had driven Lilith out. Now that the latter had died, she could not avoid being implicated. I'm not sure either. Let's go find out, said Carl. Right then, Kate's mind was in chaos. She could not just sit at home and wait for someone to update her. I'll go with you. Both Carl and Kate drove straight to Riverside Park. The park was close to their villa. So, they arrived in just over 10 minutes. After getting out of the car, Kate saw Lilith covered in blood. Moreover, her face was pale as she lay on the ground. The sight of the latter's body sent shivers down Kate's spine. She never expected that such a serious accident would happen after she chased Lilith out. Willow, what on earth happened? How did Lilith get involved with the Flying Dragons? Carl questioned. He was also terrified. Caspian had only been gone for a little over 10 days. Yet, Lilith had met such a tragic end. Madame Ziegler passed by and happened to see a group of people trying to harm a young lady, Willow explained. She continued as tears streamed down her face. She couldn't stand by and do nothing. So, she stepped in to help the woman. But in the end, they beat her to death. What does this have to do with the Flying Dragons? Carl asked again. Willow replied, her voice choking with tears. It was Derek York from the York family in South Lake City. He ordered the Flying Dragons to attack and kill Madame Ziegler. Carl was at a loss upon hearing that. He never expected that Lilith would die in their hands. He knew about the York family's influence and power in the city. Besides, no one dared to provoke the Flying Dragons either. But it's the middle of the night. Why did Lilith come to the park? Carl continued asking. Willow gritted her teeth before snapping. Why did she come to the park? Why don't you ask my mother? Right then, she harbored resentment against Kate. What exactly happened? There's no reason for Lilith to come out so late at night. Carl turned to ask Kate. Knowing that she was partly responsible for the incident, Kate told him the truth. I said something out of anger and chased her out of the villa. Suddenly, a resounding slap rang out. Carl had struck Kate across the face. He had always been a gentle person. However, at that moment, he could not control his anger. He immediately shouted, Look at what you've done. We're living in Caspian's villa. What gives you the right to drive his foster mother out? They're already generous enough not to kick us out. On the other hand, Kate was momentarily stunned. She never expected that Carl would hit her. They had been married for over a decade, and not once did he lay a hand on her. Carl Stewart, how dare you slap me? Are you asking for trouble? Kate roared. Smack. Another sharp sound echoed. Carl had slapped her again. If it weren't for you, Lilith wouldn't have left the villa. If she didn't leave, she wouldn't have died like this. How are we going to explain to Caspian when he returns? Carl chided. Kate lost her composure after he slapped her twice. She immediately swung her arms and hit him back. Yes, I chased her out. But does her being nosy have anything to do with me? It's not my fault that she died. What kind of man are you? If you have the guts, why don't you confront the York family or the Flying Dragons with a knife? Kate shouted while waving her arms. Stop it. Now is not the time for you to argue. I called you here to solve this problem, Willow interrupted. She was already in distress. Hence, her parents fighting at a time like this made her even more frustrated. At last, Kate and Carl calmed down upon hearing that. Kate looked at Lilith's body on the ground. There was blood everywhere, and she'd sustained multiple injuries. The sight of her body evoked fear in Kate. She quickly realized how brutal the members of the Flying Dragons were. Just an hour ago, Lilith was still alive and well. Yet, In the blink of an eye, she had met such a tragic fate. Even though Kate was not the culprit, she was well aware of her connection to the incident. When Caspian returns, never tell him that I chased Lilith out. Otherwise, he won't let me off so easily, Kate ordered as she trembled with fear. Soon, a car from the office of Inspector General and an ambulance arrived. After making the call, Priscilla dared not return to the park. The incident shook her to the core. Moreover, she only managed to break free after a tough struggle. So, of course, she did not want to go back. As soon as the personnel from the Office of Inspector General arrived, they secured the scene. With that, Willow's last flicker of hope had faded. The people from the Office of Inspector General proceeded to investigate the scene. Then, they had an ambulance take Lilith's body away. Subsequently, they took Willow to the station for questioning. She told them the entire story, how Lilith bravely stepped in to help a young lady, and how Derek and the members of the Flying Dragons beat her to death. The Office of Inspector General assured her they would conduct a thorough investigation. They also asked her to wait for their updates at home. 3 days later, they released the report. Chapter 57, Caspian's Triumphant Return. The police bureau's report read, Lilith Ziegler got into a physical altercation with the citizen. The situation soon escalated into a fight and resulted in the murder of Lilith. The citizen also jumped into a lake and drowned. Willow could tell that the report was completely fabricated nonsense. She was sure that the York family was involved in covering up the incident. She also understood the limits of her own capabilities, as she could not directly confront the almost invincible York family. Willow wanted to notify Caspian about the matter, but she ultimately chose to honor Lilith's instructions and abandon the thought. She decided that she would tell Caspian once he returned. The incident never became widespread news within South Lake City, being the result of the police bureau's deliberate censorship. Nobody else but Willow and her family would ever know about Lilith's death. Willow retrieved Lilith's body and brought Lilith to her final resting place within the South Lake Cemetery. Lilith's funeral was as plain as it can get. The only people present to mourn her death were Willow, her family, Miranda, and Zoe. Both Miranda and Zoe only received news of the incident when Willow told them about it. They, too, had never expected such a sudden disaster. Miranda proposed to notify Caspian to acquire his help, knowing that his power and affluence could bring justice to the matter. Willow, however, remained steadfast in following Lilith's wishes. During the funeral procession, Priscilla, along with her parents, also joined the funeral to mourn for Lilith. She sobbed uncontrollably in front of Lilith's tombstone. She was especially heartbroken that Lilith had died to save her. Her parents also expressed their gratitude and grieved for the deceased. Priscilla and her family could do nothing more than pay their respects, as they could not do anything against the untouchable York family, as well as the Flying Dragons. A week later, in the South Aridlands, the moonlight shone brightly as the cold wind gently swept the lands. Caspian stood under the moonlight with an imposing presence. Behind him stood hundreds of thousands of soldiers. Before him were mountains of corpses of the opposing Tigra soldiers. The piled-up bodies resembled small hills under the moonlight. Caspian had prepared for this massive battle for a week. His preparations came to fruition as he and his men had completely annihilated their opposition within 5 hours of brutal fighting. Tigra's elites have fallen before us. Lord Caspian's name will revel not just in glory of our own, but also instill fear into all of Tigra. Julian spoke out with reverence for Caspian. Lord Caspian is truly an incredible strategist. He has brought us such an incredible and satisfying victory. May the great name of Lord Caspian be known throughout the world. Sylvia chimed in as she looked at the piles of corpses. We've achieved a complete victory with minimal casualties. With our enemies' elites annihilated, no one would ever dare invade the South Aridlands ever again. All hail Lord Caspian. Julian continued singing his praises. This victory is not achieved by me alone. It is achieved with all of us working together to defeat our enemies. Everyone will be rewarded for their efforts, in achieving such an outstanding victory. As for our fallen brothers and sisters, we will never forget their bravery and sacrifice. Bring them back with us with utmost respect, and notify their families of their sacrifice for the greater good." Caspian finally answered, "Yes, sir," heeded Julian and Sylvia. The next day, news of the great victory at South Eredland spread throughout the country. Towns became lively as the citizens began their celebrations. Tigra immediately opted to send an envoy in an attempt to remediate the relationship between Tigra and Diatoran. They were obviously spooked after their military suffered such a major loss against Caspian and his men. The battle resulted in heavy losses for Tigra. They had to suffer both shame from surrendering, as well as monetary losses in compensation for the victor. The king of Diatoran, Balthazar Drake, was overjoyed with the news. He invited Caspian to personally accept Tigra's plea for peace. Caspian and Tigra's envoy would then meet up at the South Eredlands to sign a bilateral agreement. The next day, Balthazar personally made an appearance in the South Eredlands to reward the troops. Caspian, Julian, Sylvia, and various other notable players who contributed to the victory were appropriately rewarded. Balthazar even presented Caspian with a golden set of armor. It would not function as properly as genuine armor, but it represented Caspian's power and authority, approved by the king. "Your Majesty, now that the South Eredlands are peaceful once more, I wish to return to South Lake City," requested Caspian. Caspian still wanted to return to South Lake City to live a peaceful life. Again, Diatoran's borders will not be safe without the Diatoranian god of war, answered Balthazar. Our victory against Tigra would cripple them for generations to come. They would not dare to attempt war again, answered Caspian. Caspian had already made up his mind, despite Balthazar's request for him to remain active. After some negotiations, Balthazar would approve for Caspian to return to South Lake City for a while. Balthazar felt that Caspian deserved some rest after he was urgently called to arms on his wedding night. Caspian would be classified as inactive personnel, but he could always make his return to be the Diatoran god of war whenever he wanted. Balthazar also assigned Sylvia to accompany Caspian back to South Lake City as his bodyguard. Caspian had also promised that he would return to serve if war were to break out once more. As he was about to leave, his fellow soldiers also chimed in, asking for him to remain. "Lord Caspian, the South Eredlands need you," said Julian. "Cut the crap, our enemies have already retreated. Besides, with you around, the South Eredlands will be as safe as it can get," answered Caspian. "Lord Caspian, I'm just worried that other countries may attempt to invade after you have left," explained Julian. "Relax. I'm just going home to my wife for a few days. You don't have to make it sound so dramatic. If anything happens, notify Sylvia, and she will inform me about it. I will be back." The crowd no longer stood in his way. They respected his decision and his need to spend a honeymoon with his wife. 2 days later, in South Lake City, an SUV drove into the city, along with two calm-looking individuals. Unbeknownst to the public, sitting in the car was the Diatoranian god of war himself. The driver was Sylvia, assigned as his bodyguard. "I'm sure Willow and Mrs. Stewart would be delighted to find you back home, Caspian," said Sylvia. Caspian had Sylvia refer to him directly by name while they were back in the city. He did not want Sylvia to refer to him as Lord Caspian, as it would attract unnecessary attention. It would shock South Lake City to its core if the public found out about his title and achievements. Caspian realized that it would also be troublesome if the aristocracy within the city began paying their respects to him every single day. Chapter 58. Too late. Caspian was not fond of having worshippers. He just wanted to keep a low profile as he reunited with Willow back in South Lake City. "Who knows if Willow will be happy, but I'm sure my mom would be elated to find me safely returning after a great victory. I'll have to bring her out for an exquisite dinner tonight to celebrate my return," said Caspian with a big smile. The thought of Lilith being happy and proud of him made Caspian happy as well. Of course, I'll make the arrangements for dinner. We'll have some drinks to celebrate as well, I answered Sylvia. When their car approached Riverside Villa, Caspian noticed a woman with an outstanding figure surrounded by 6 men in suits. Upon closer inspection, he realized that the woman in trouble was in fact his wife, Willow. He wondered what these men were trying to do. Also, who were they? Stop the car. I want to see what's going on over there, Caspian calmly declared. Yes, sir. Sylvia parked the car and quickly noticed as well that the woman in trouble was Willow. Ms. Stewart, Derek had stated his wishes for you to attend Mrs. York Sr.'s birthday party with him, preferably as his girlfriend. The man leading the group was Benedict York, a butler of the York family. In his dreams, I don't want anything to do with the Yorks. He just killed my mother-in-law, and still dares to invite me to a party. He's shameless, Willow furiously retorted. She had not expected Derek to be so brazen, to be aiming for her as a significant other right after killing Lilith. Mind your words, Ms. Stewart. You should be honored to be chosen by Derek himself. Know your place. Benedict's expression sank as he coldly exclaimed, "What are you trying to do?" Willow immediately sensed that something was not right. You won't be getting away today. You will be going to the birthday party, willingly or not. Benedict waved his hands at the other men. The gang of men stepped up and began to forcefully carry Willow away. Let me go, right now. I'm already a married woman. I couldn't possibly be Derek's girlfriend, shouted Willow. I've heard that your good-for-nothing husband had left for the front lines in South Eridlands. I reckon that he's lying among the corpses right now. Might as well move on and become Derek's woman, if you know what's good for you. Benedict put on a sinister smile. Let me go. Help. Anyone. Please help. Help. Willow began to struggle and shouted for help. Sylvia was furious as she witnessed the scene unfold. She wondered if the hooligans were seeking an early death, trying to mess with the wife of the Diateranian god of war. Caspian, look. Those bastards are trying to hurt Willow. I'll go and teach them a lesson. Sylvia was ready to get out of the car. Don't worry. I'll handle it, replied Caspian with annoyance. He could not possibly hold himself back after returning to South Lake City, just to find his own wife being bullied. Just leave these hooligans to me, Caspian, answered Sylvia. It's only natural for me to save my own wife. Caspian's tone became cold and murderous as he stepped out of the car. Sylvia froze for a moment before following closely behind him. As Willow was about to be dragged into a car, a thunderous roar came from behind the group of men. Stop right there. The sudden loud roar left the group of men slightly disoriented. They turned around to find a sturdy-looking man striding toward them. His intention to fight was clear, as his gaze was piercing deep into their body. Behind the man followed a woman with an exquisite, graceful figure. She also parroted the man's furious demeanor. Willow was surprised upon recognizing that the two of them were Caspian and Sylvia. Who the fuck are you? This has nothing to do with you. Piss off. Otherwise, you're making enemies with the York family. Benedict had completely no idea who the man before him was. Nothing to do with me, you say. I am Willow's husband, Caspian Lynch, answered Caspian, as he stared daggers into Benedict. Caspian. Benedict was taken aback by the man claiming to be Willow's husband. Rumors about Caspian claimed that he was a complete good for nothing, but the man standing before Benedict right now seemed powerful. Oh, I see. So, you're the rumored loser of a husband. It must be a miracle that you did not die in the South Eridlands. Well, Derek would love to rescue your wife from a sorry excuse of a man like you. Not that you can do anything about. Benedict had his speech cut short by Caspian's fist. Thuds could be heard as Caspian's fist connected with his targets at lightning speed. All 6 men were collectively hit in an instant. Cries of pain followed suit as all 6 men fell down to the floor. They never even managed to see Caspian's attacks before they fell to the ground. Willow, are you okay? Sorry, I'm late. Caspian began to console the frightened Willow. You're late. It's too late. It's all too late. Willow began to lash out. Caspian was stunned, as he did not understand what Willow was trying to convey. Willow, please calm down. Let's talk about it. Okay. Sylvia intercepted the couple after noticing Willow's abnormal behavior. Willow, what exactly happened? Asked Caspian. It can't be explained with just a few words. I'll tell you all about it when we get home, answered Willow. Caspian nodded in agreement. You're right. Let us go home. Caspian, what should we do with these people? Asked Sylvia. They can fuck off. Caspian waved his hand, seemingly uninterested in the men he just defeated. You heard the man. Now fuck off and never come back. Sylvia lifted her legs and kicked Benedict. The group of men then crawled back to their car and swiftly escaped. Caspian and Willow finally returned to their home. He entered the house to find Kate leisurely lying on the sofa, watching television. Mrs. Stewart, I'm back from the South Airdlands, shouted Caspian. Kate was shocked by Caspian's return. You're back so soon. This is great news. You're safe and sound. Kate did not want to see Caspian as she was still unsure of how to disclose the news of Lilith's death to him. Peace has returned to the South Airdlands, and so, I have returned home, exclaimed Caspian. He began to look around for Lilith as he questioned, Where's my mom? She's gone back to the countryside. Kate casually made up an excuse for Lilith's absence. She was afraid of revealing the truth to him just yet. When did that happen? Why? Asked Caspian. She said that she couldn't get used to life in the city, and so she went back to calm her nerves, Kate answered nervously. Chapter 59. The Truth. Caspian nodded and did not doubt Kate's explanation. He surmised that it was normal for seniors to prefer a home they had long been accustomed to. Sylvia, let us head to the countryside. We're going to fetch my mom. Yes, sir. Kate began to panic. What's the rush, dear? You've just made it home. You should rest up for a while. I finally come home, so I want to spend some time with her in the city. I want to bring her to enjoy her favorite meals and hang out. She became even more uneasy. No. Caspian quickly noticed her abnormal behavior. His expression sank as he sensed that something was amiss. What's wrong? What's going on? She could not look him straight in the face, let alone answer his questions. He then turned toward Willow for answers. Willow, where's my mom? Willow lowered her head as she realized that she could not hide the truth any longer. Lilith was killed. Her funeral's already over. The sudden revelation hit Caspian like a bolt of lightning. Sylvia, as well, was shocked to her core after hearing the news. What the fuck are you talking about? What exactly happened? Why would my mom be killed? Caspian was in denial. She suffered multiple stabs. Willow tried her best to explain, but she was already choking back on her tears. Sylvia was also visibly angered and annoyed by the news. Caspian felt a sudden sharp pain in his chest as he lost his balance momentarily. Sylvia panicked and almost spoke the wrong name. Lord Caspian, are you okay? Over the years by his side, she had known Caspian for being unfazed by absolutely anything in life. It was the first time that he had been so emotional. She could only imagine the pain that he was going through at that moment. Caspian had made a triumphant return, intending to celebrate with Lilith, only to be met with the worst news. He was heartbroken to find that Lilith was killed before he could repay her for her boundless love, and how she treated him better than his actual parents. He had conquered the battlefield and valiantly fought for the safety of Diatorin, but he could not even protect his own foster mother. Who did this? Who would kill her? Asked Caspian in tears. Caspian was understandably furious to find one of the most important people in his life was no longer with him, after only a month of absence due to his military obligations. His triumphant return would never be witnessed, and he would never again be greeted by the person he cared for the most. Parents passing away before their children could repay them was arguably the most bitter feeling in the world. Do you intend to avenge Lilith? There's nothing we could do about it. Willow was still unaware of Caspian's true identity. Caspian wanted to find out the killer of his beloved foster mother. Just tell me who did it, Willow. I need to know who killed my mom. Not even South Lake City would be spared if the Diateranian god of war wills it. It's the flying dragons. They killed Lilith. Do you see why no one dared to avenge her now? Willow gave a bitter, self-loathing smile. Caspian asked, what does my mom have anything to do with the flying dragons, or even the Yorks? Why did they do this? He was not afraid of some random gang within South Lake City. He just wanted to know why any of this had happened. The flying dragons held a lot of power within the city, and had been a public menace that was both feared and respected by the public. But for Caspian, they were never even a threat. All of this happened because of Derek York, answered Willow. What does he want? Caspian only had heard of passing mentions about the York family. He would forcefully take away any woman he fancied, without the woman's choice in the matter. On the night 20 days ago, Mom was on a stroll at Riverside Park, when she saw a woman named Priscilla almost getting taken away by Derek's men. The Girl Scout within her could not ignore the woman, and leave her in danger, and thus, she sprung into action. Willow deliberately hid the truth from Caspian, that Lilith was driven out of the house by Kate. The details of the incident were from retellings that Willow received from Priscilla. The flying dragons escalated the situation with weapons from wooden bats to even knives. Mom could not have possibly won against them. When I arrived at the scene, I found Derek sitting in his car. I tried pleading with him to let Mom go, knowing that the flying dragon members were under his command. He made me a deal to spend the night with him, which I refused. In the midst of the chaos, Priscilla managed to escape. Mom tried to delay the flying dragons while she insisted that I bring Priscilla and run away. I listened to her and drove Priscilla to safety before returning to pick Mom up. When I arrived back at the scene, she was already bleeding out from her stab wounds, and all the perpetrators had long fled the scene. Before she died, she told me. Willow was sobbing uncontrollably at this point. She told me to not tell you about what happened, so as to not cause any distractions while you were in the front lines. She recalled the incident to Caspian through her tears. She finally let out her cries as she finished retelling the story. It had been almost a month since Lilith was killed, but Willow still felt guilty about it. Sylvia, at the side, was also tearing up from the disastrous news. Caspian was enraged. He had never expected the flying dragons to be so daringly inhumane. He forcibly composed himself and asked, "What the fuck is the police doing? How are some gang members running around town doing whatever they like? I've tried seeking help from the police, but it seemed that they were working in tandem with the flying dragons and the York family. They issued a completely false report on the incident and censored any attempt of it making it onto the news. The public does not even know about Lilith's death," replied Willow. She felt offended and outraged that the police were so corrupt as to side with the antagonists. Caspian asked, "Why did you not tell me about this immediately?" "Mom had specifically instructed me to never tell you about it until you made it home safely," explained Willow. His anger soon turned into sorrow as he realized that Lilith still had the best intentions for him in mind even in her dying moments. Caspian made a silent declaration within his heart. The flying dragons, the York family, and even the police. Whoever it is that was involved in my mother's death, I won't let them get away with this. Chapter 60, Early Grave. Lilith grew up as a Girl Scout. She always helped people in need and developed a sense of justice that would inspire future generations to come. Caspian never expected, and could never accept, that his own foster mother, whom he cherished the most, was beaten to death by some low-life hooligans. He would avenge his mother, no matter what it took. Revenge was a dish best served cold. He would seek his vengeance to only be repaid by the blood of his enemies. Both Derek and the flying dragons would have to pay with their lives. He asked, "Where is her final resting place?" "I need to pay a visit." "South Lake Cemetery," answered Willow. Kate was finally relieved as she let out a long sigh. She was worried that Willow might include the detail that she had driven Lilith out of the house, which led to her demise. Caspian spoke up. Sylvia, I need you to investigate this matter. Check the surveillance footage around Riverside Park and find out what exactly happened. I'll be waiting for you in South Lake Cemetery. He felt that Willow's version of events was not exactly complete. He wanted to unveil the absolute truth behind the incident, as well as see the last moments of Lilith before she passed away. Yes, sir. Sylvia immediately started on her task. Both Willow and Kate were surprised to find Sylvia being so respectful in her gestures toward Caspian. Willow, come with me to the cemetery. Of course, let's go. Willow knew of the deep bond between Caspian and Lilith. It was only natural that he would seek to pay homage to his late mother. Willow then drove Caspian to South Lake Cemetery. She brought him to Lilith's tombstone. Here lies Lilith Ziegler. The words directly pierced Caspian's heart. He still could not accept that Lilith had in fact passed away. Suddenly, several SUVs drove into the cemetery. The cars collectively came to a halt, and men with weapons began exiting the car, with their gaze fixed onto Caspian. They were all men of the Flying Dragons working for Quentin Lane, one of the founders of the gang. Prior to this, Benedict had notified Derek that he had failed to capture Willow and was beaten up by Caspian. Derek was both annoyed and furious. He had been restless over acquiring his target ever since meeting Willow. And today would be the birthday party for the York family's matriarch, Nadia. He wanted Willow to be at his side as his girlfriend when he attended the party, so as to garner attention and praise for acquiring the most beautiful woman in South Lake City. He understood that he had antagonized Willow when he caused Lilith's death, and so he would have to double down and forcibly seize Willow as his woman without her choice in the matter. He was prepared to do anything to achieve his goal. Any woman that Derek had his eyes on would eventually become his possession. He promptly contacted Quentin for the help of the Flying Dragons to capture Willow. Quentin, however, decided to keep up his image as the leader of the Flying Dragons. He simply delegated the task to his trusted subordinate, Wade Powell, to finish the job. The Flying Dragons had eyes and ears all over South Lake City, so news about Willow's whereabouts was easily tracked and caught on by Wade. Wade swiftly gathered some men and made haste for South Lake Cemetery to meet their target. This is bad. The Flying Dragons are here. We gotta go. Willow was scared out of her mind as she realized the gang members were armed. Perfect. Caspian saw this as the perfect opportunity to vent his frustrations. It was fortunate, even, that his enemies came to him by themselves. Willow tried to explain the situation. Do you realize what's going on? You can't fight so many of them by yourself. He calmly replied, I do. And you will come to the same realization in due time. He saw the enemies in front of him as nothing but soon to be corpses. She began to pull on his arm. Don't be so reckless. Okay. I know you want to avenge Mom, but we can't do this without the actual power to do so. They aren't just violent, but they have powerful connections in the shadows as well. We need to get out of here. We can only think of revenge if we're still alive to do so. No matter how much Willow tried, however, Caspian was not budging from his place. He coldly exclaimed, They're delivering themselves to an early death. I have no reason to run away. I will avenge my mother right here, right now. In the blink of an eye, Wade and his men had already surrounded the couple. Ha! Let's see if you can still run away. Wade began to gloat as he confirmed his men were in position. Run away, you say? Why would I need to do that? Explained Caspian with a serious expression. Wade continued, Well, it's too late to even try escaping. You know, if you behave properly, kneel and beg for forgiveness, and then send your wife to the York family right away, you might just be spared. You're insane. My husband is a distinguished veteran who just returned from the victory at South Aridlands. The military will not condone your actions if you harm a man of service. Willow tried to threaten the men. Wade was not fazed at all. Military, my ass. The Flying Dragons decide the rules in South Lake City. He's nothing but a loser within our city. He was completely underestimating Caspian. Wade continued, Miss Stewart, If you wish to see a peaceful outcome today, you should just follow us to the York residence. Mr. York is waiting for you." "I'd rather die than be Derek's woman," declared Willow. "What a mistake, Miss Stewart. I was told not to hurt you by Mr. York, and besides, I wouldn't be able to bring myself to hurt someone as beautiful as you. You should know better than to create another victim like the one right below your feet. If you wish to spare your husband, you'd better do as I say. The birthday party for Mrs. York Sr. is about to begin. All that's left of the puzzle would be you by Mr. York's side." Caspian was relaxed and not in a hurry to fight back. In his eyes, all the men before him were already dead. Willow roared with annoyance. "Derek just killed my mother-in-law and still wants to kidnap me. Do you guys not have any morals? How could even possibly perform such a heartless act and work for such an evil person? Do you not fear the wrath of God for the sins you have committed?" "Wrath of God? That's funny. Well, I'm not really religious, so I guess I'm immune to his silly wrath," answered Wade. "God is not blind. All the atrocities that you have committed will be punished. Karma will find its way back to you. Even the law is on our side. Miss Stewart, snap back to reality. Or if you're just making a joke, it's pretty funny. I'll give you that." Wade remained audacious. At this moment, another SUV arrived at the party. Sylvia skillfully stopped the car in front of the couple. Wade and his men hurriedly dodged the car as it made its appearance. Willow was surprised by Sylvia's arrival. She had thought that Sylvia was sent to check on the surveillance footage. As Sylvia got out of the car, she became enraged as she surveyed the surrounding Flying Dragon members. She had just finished her task of going through the surveillance footage at the park. After witnessing the incident, she could recognize some of the men who were directly responsible for killing Lilith. She could not wait any longer to tear these bastards into pieces.